Life has a funny way of throwing you curveballs. You can spend years meticulously planning your future, drawing a straight line from point A to point B, only to have a single chance encounter send you careening down a path you never knew existed. Sometimes a simple act of kindness, an unexpected dinner invitation from a neighbor, can unlock a door to a whole new chapter of your life, a chapter that is as thrilling as it is complicated. Today's story is from a man named Ken, a man in his mid 30s who had dedicated years to building a quiet, stable, and solitary life in the bustling heart of New York City. He thought he knew who he was and what his life was about. But then he met his neighbor, Helen, a woman in her 50s, and her daughter, Emily, a woman in her 20s. And in a short span of time, his orderly, lonely world was turned completely upside down in a way he never could have imagined. This is a story about loneliness, connection, and the tangled, messy relationships that can bloom when we least expect them. I never, ever thought this would happen to me. What I'm about to tell you might sound like a crazy fantasy, or maybe to some of you, a pretty messed up story. Just a short while ago, I found myself in a relationship with my next door neighbor, Helen, and also with her daughter, Emily. Helen is in her 50s and Emily is in her 20s. I know, just hearing that is probably enough to make you think I'm some kind of degenerate and click away. I get it. But please, just be patient and hear me out. If you do, I think you might be able to understand, just a little, the strange and powerful feelings that led me here. Right now, I'm a pretty average office worker in my mid 30s, grinding away in New York City. I'm originally from a small town out in the countryside, and because of my job, I've been living alone for a long time. When I first moved to the city for work, I was lucky just to get my foot in the door. For the first few years, like so many young people trying to make it here, I lived in a tiny, run-down apartment to save every penny I could on rent. If you want a studio in this city on an entry-level salary, you don't have many choices. After a few years of living in that cheap, cramped room, I had worked hard and managed to save up a decent amount of money. I finally had enough to start living like an actual human being. So I moved to a quiet residential neighborhood a bit further out from the city center. At first, I was just looking for a normal one-bedroom apartment, but I found a place that was a bit of a unicorn, a two-bedroom, with one of the rooms being a traditional Japanese-style tatami room for the same price as a one-bedroom closer to the train station. I figured that having more space was always better. Plus, I thought, if my parents ever came to visit from back home, it would be nice to have a proper room for them to stay in. And so, in my fifth year in the city, I finally achieved what felt like the foundation of a real adult life. I still can't forget the thrill I felt back then. It was just a few days after I moved in. I was coming home from work when I ran into my next door neighbor for the first time. She introduced herself as Helen and welcomed me to the building. She was the one who would become so important in this story. Neighbors are a big deal in this city, so I immediately bowed my head, apologized for not introducing myself sooner, and gave her the brightest, most respectful smile I could muster. "Oh, don't worry about it," she said, her own smile warm and genuine. "You seem like a very kind and well-mannered young man." She returned my greeting with a warmth that instantly put me at ease. "Good luck from now on." That was my first meeting with Helen. As I got to know her, Helen told me she worked as a manager at a local pub. It seemed she often came home much later than I did. On the days I had to work late, I'd frequently run into her in the neighborhood. We fell into an easy, comfortable rhythm. Every time we saw each other, we'd exchange a light greeting, a small, pleasant punctuation mark in the routine of our lives. One evening, on my way home from work, I saw Helen struggling down the street, her arms laden with heavy grocery bags. This looked tough, so I immediately ran up to her. "Helen, that looks heavy," I said. "Let me carry those for you." "Oh, Ken, you're a lifesaver," she said, her voice full of relief. Without hesitation, she handed the bags over. I honestly thought my arms were going to tear off. We walked the rest of the way to our building side by side, chatting and laughing. After I carried the bags into her apartment, Helen thanked me profusely. "As a thank you," she said, "how about a cold drink?" I declined once, saying it was no problem, but she insisted. "Please wait. Actually, I made some homemade pickles the other day. They're really good. Let me give you some. Honestly, I wasn't that interested in a drink, but I was deeply intrigued by the words homemade pickles. The longer you live alone, the more you find yourself inexplicably craving those simple, homey tastes. I would reluctantly buy the bland, store bought kind at the supermarket, but I had never even considered making my own. Really? I said, my interest piqued. If it's not too much trouble, I'd love to try them. Of course not, she said, her eyes lighting up. I made them with fresh radishes and cucumbers. They're delicious. She packed a large Tupperware container full of the pickles and handed it to me. That night's dinner, for the first time in a long while, felt like a real meal. I had white rice, warm miso soup, and the pickles from Helen. The pickles were exquisite. I couldn't stop eating them. They were nothing like the ones from the store. They had a deep, complex flavor that spoke of care and tradition. In that moment, I felt again so strongly that things made by human hands are just different. I nearly finished the entire container of pickles that same day. The next day, after coming home from work, I transferred the remaining pickles to a small bowl, washed the Tupperware thoroughly, and immediately went over to Helen's apartment to return it. You finished them already? Helen seemed surprised by my appetite. They were just so good, I confessed. They honestly reminded me of my mom's cooking. It made me a little homesick. Helen seemed genuinely pleased. Well, I'll be sure to bring you some more the next time I make a batch. I was about to head back to my own apartment when Helen stopped me. Hey, Ken, if you're not busy, why don't you have dinner with me? I can whip something up right now. I was taken aback. Oh no, I couldn't impose like that. But Helen just waved my protests away. It's fine, it's fine. You must get tired of eating alone all the time. It's no trouble to make an extra portion. Don't worry about it. She was right. I was tired of eating alone every single night. The loneliness of it was a constant low grade ache in my chest. I couldn't refuse her kind invitation. I decided to gratefully accept her offer. While she prepared the meal, she asked me all sorts of questions. What do you usually eat? What's your job like? Where are your parents from? It was a warm, easy conversation, even if it was just small talk. I tried to get up to help, but she just laughed and told me to sit down and relax. I'll have this ready in no time, she said. It had been a month since I'd moved in, and for the first time, I was having dinner with my neighbor. Helen said it was nothing special, but to me, it was a feast. Simple pork soup and a few side dishes, but everything tasted like it had been made with love, like something my own mother would have made for me. And those pickles, they were still the best part. I told her honestly how delicious everything was, and she beamed, refilling my rice bowl twice. You really do eat well, Ken, she said, watching me with a happy expression. Just watching you makes me want to eat more. After the meal, as we sat and talked, I felt the sharp edges of my loneliness begin to soften. Helen seemed pleased too to have a non lonely dinner for the first time in a while. She even served some seasonal fruit for dessert. I offered to at least wash the dishes, but she stubbornly refused. Well, is there anything I can do in return? I asked. Helen thought for a moment, then leaned a little closer, a playful glint in her eye. Well, she said, you could have a little drink with me. When I asked, she explained that she loved to have a drink at night, but had recently been cutting back because she didn't like drinking alone. I agreed with two answers. I was also reluctant to drink alone and hadn't had a proper drink in a long time. It seemed there was no suitable alcohol in her house, so I started to say I would go to the supermarket to buy some, but she quickly stopped me. It's fine. I have a few bottles of Japanese sake in my room, so I'll get them right away. Then Helen said, by the way, I wonder if there's any beer. I said that I'd like to drink with a bomb on my hand, and I pooped playfully. In the end, I took out a few bottles of Japanese sake from my room, bought a beer at a nearby convenience store, and went back to Helen's house. This is how Helen and I started our little dinner parties. Helen was a better drinker than I had imagined. As the alcohol flowed, she became more relaxed, more open. You know, she said, her voice a little husky, it's nice to drink like this, just enjoying the conversation. At the pub where I work, I'm always busy. I never get a chance to just sit and drink. With the help of the alcohol, Helen began to tell me about her life, little by little. She told me she had a daughter, Emily, who was in college out of state and only came home about once a month. She had been divorced from her husband for a long time and hadn't seen him since. There was a moment when she abruptly changed the subject, saying that just thinking about that man made her angry. I, in turn, told her about myself, how I had lived in internet cafes and capsule hotels for years after first moving to New York, just to save every penny. Ken, you're really amazing, Helen said, her eyes wide with admiration. I can't believe you worked so hard and saved up so diligently to get such a nice place. You're so young, but you have such strength and sincerity. She praised me over and over again. As the sack flowed between us, we gradually began to open up about the deeper feelings in our hearts. Helen, swirling the sake in her glass, started to speak in a slightly sad voice. When I see a young man like you, Ken, I feel like I've wasted so much of my own time. I get frustrated with myself sometimes. When I was younger, some people still saw me as a woman. But at this age, no one looks at me that way anymore. Her voice was filled with a loneliness and resignation that I could feel in my own soul, the unique pain of feeling invisible. I'm probably too old to be talking like this, she added with a self deprecating laugh. That's not true at all, I immediately denied. Age doesn't matter. You're still a very attractive woman, Helen. Helen seemed a little flustered by my words, but her complex expression, a mixture of doubt and pleasure, suggested she was happy to hear it. Then, she subtly shifted her position on the sofa, leaning just a little bit closer to me. In that instant, I felt the entire atmosphere in the room change. What do you find attractive about me? She asked, her voice a low murmur. She gently reached out, her hand covering mine. Your hands, Ken, they're so strong. They're a man's hands. Helen's fingers traced the back of my hand, a touch that was gentle but also deeply provocative. The sensation sent a tingling warmth through my entire body. I felt like it was a signal. The alcohol was buzzing in my veins, and it had been years since I had been with a woman, having prioritized saving money over everything else. The heat from her fingertips awakened a desire that had been dormant deep within me for so long. I couldn't stand it anymore. I finally turned my hand over and squeezed hers. Helen, I asked, my voice barely a whisper, is this okay? She responded to my sudden question with a small, knowing smile, and then replied in a low but clear voice, yes, you can do whatever you like. In that moment, we left the half-drunk sake on the table and, as if guided by some unseen force, made our way to Helen's bedroom. It felt like I was in a dream. From that point on, we could only think of each other. Helen expressed her pleasure with repeated, unrestrained sounds. Perhaps because of her years of experience, she was bold and assertive, demanding things from me without any reservation. One time she told me she liked to be held from behind and invited me to do so. It was so exciting. My heart felt like it would burst. In the end, just as she wanted, we made love again and again. We climaxed at the same time, a perfect, shared moment. I wonder how many years it's been. Helen sighed contentedly, her body still wrapped in my arms. Since I've been held so completely. She praised me, saying, young men really are different. I confessed to her that I hadn't been with a woman for years, ever since I moved to New York. Oh, really? Helen was surprised. Then how on earth did you endure it for so long? But she immediately smiled a sad, knowing smile. Well, you don't have to endure it anymore. You can come to me whenever you want. Men need to release their energy sometimes. Her words, which showed that she was completely smitten with me, made me desire her even more. In the end, we made love repeatedly until dawn that night. It had been so long for me, and I was so captivated by her mature charm that my body just kept demanding more. The sun was already starting to rise when I finally slipped out of her bed, returned to my own apartment, and rushed to get ready for work. In this way, a slightly secret and very sweet relationship with my neighbor began. After work, I would go to Helen's place, we would have dinner together, and then we would make love. I felt that the time I spent with Helen was truly compatible. Every time she climaxed in my arms, the look of pure bliss on her face sent me over the moon. One evening, after we had made love as usual, as we were lying in bed talking, Helen brought something up. Hey, Ken, she said, my daughter will be graduating from college soon and coming back home to live for a while, so it might be a little difficult for us to meet like this every day. She said she was happy her daughter was coming back, but she was sad that she wouldn't be able to be with me so freely. I honestly replied that I was sad too. Then I asked if Helen would be willing to come to my apartment sometimes, but she was a little cautious, saying that she would have to see how things went with her daughter first. And indeed, a few days later, Helen's daughter Emily came home. Emily, who had just graduated from college, was a typical woman in her early 20s. She had the fresh, confident air of a recent grad, but also a slightly aloof, cool vibe that seemed common among young people these days. I saw Helen and Emily in the hallway, and I greeted them. Helen, hi. I then tried to give Emily a light, friendly greeting as well. At first, Emily just gave me a slightly awkward nod, as if she was a little flustered. This is Ken, the man who lives next door, Helen told her daughter. You should say hello properly. She was gently trying to bridge the gap between us. For a while after Emily returned, it was impossible to spend time with Helen. At night, Emily would sometimes go out, but I never knew when she would be back, so I was reluctant to go over to Helen's place. Then I had a few more chances to run into Emily. I made a point of greeting her positively since she was Helen's daughter, but Emily initially seemed a little wary of me. Then one day, I was coming home from work and saw Emily standing in front of her apartment door. That day, for the first time, Emily spoke to me. Excuse me, she said, are you good with computers? When I asked her what was wrong, Emily explained that she had accidentally deleted some of her resume and cover letter files that she had been using for her job search, and she didn't know how to recover them. I see, I said. Let me take a look. I can probably get them back for you. I thought this might be a good chance to shorten the distance with Emily, who had been a little hard to approach. A few minutes later, Emily came to my apartment with her laptop. I opened the computer in my living room and started searching for the files. The way she sat next to me, waiting nervously, made her seem like a little girl, and I found it cute. After searching for a while, I was able to recover some of the resume and cover letter files. When I confirmed with her that they were the right ones, Emily looked incredibly relieved. Oh my God, thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. I asked her how her job search was going. She had applied to several companies, but nothing was decided yet. She shrugged unhappily, saying that it was tough to find a job these days. It was then that Emily asked me a surprising question. So, you and my mom are pretty close, right? I hid the fact that we were lovers, just saying that we were good neighbors and that she had been very kind to me. As a senior who has some experience with the job market, I offered, if you ever have any problems or questions, you can always ask me. Emily seemed a little embarrassed, but then she looked at me with a serious expression. Well, if you don't mind, could you please take a look at my cover letter? Of course, I readily agreed. So Emily and I sat side by side, looking at her laptop screen, and began to work on her cover letter together. To be honest, the sentences Emily had written were quite poor. Don't young people these days practice writing in school? I'm no great writer myself, but I still thought I was better than Emily. Also, when you're giving advice on someone else's writing, for some reason, your own brain seems to work better than usual. Emily was a little embarrassed every time I pointed something out, but she corrected each sentence one by one as I taught her. After struggling for a long time, we finally finished a cover letter that was presentable. I helped her upload the documents to the company's application system, and the job was finally done. Emily was ecstatic. She seemed relieved from the bottom of her heart and was truly grateful. As a thank you, she said, her eyes sparkling, let me treat you to a meal. How about some chicken and beer? I agreed with two answers, saying I'd love to. In this way, without planning it, Emily and I decided to go to a local pub, just the two of us. Emily, it turned out, was quite a good drinker, much like her mother. She downed a pint of draft beer with gusto. I can't let a job seeker pay for it, I insisted. Just eat and drink without worrying about it. This is on me. Really? Emily's eyes lit up with unhesitating joy. It had been a long time since I'd had a drink alone with a young woman, and it was fresh and fun. As a man in my mid 30s, I never had the chance to drink with such a cute girl. I led the conversation to liven up Emily's mood. After a few beers, Emily became a little more relaxed and couldn't stop talking. She listened to my life story and praised me, saying it was amazing that I had come to New York from the countryside and made a life for myself on my own. I'm a free spirit, she declared, so I want to get a job as soon as possible and live on my own again. My parents' house is nice, but when I'm with my mom, it feels a little constricting. The way she said things like that still felt a bit childish. As the drinks flowed, the atmosphere between us became sweeter and more intimate. We couldn't stop laughing, the conversation was lively, and it was a really fun time. As Emily started to get drunk, she began to exhibit a certain kind of intense desire that was similar to her mother's. The frequency of her accidental physical contact, her arm brushing against mine, increased. When I looked at her flushed, heated face, I had a strong feeling that she was also the type who enjoyed that sort of thing. In the middle of the conversation, Emily said that it was hot in the pub and took off the sweater she was wearing. Underneath was a top with a rather daring design that clearly showed the cleavage of her breasts. I couldn't help but feel a tightness in my chest. I was having trouble with where to put my eyes. I think Emily was convinced that I was flustered. I asked Emily if she usually dressed like that. She giggled and said, "Well, yes. If I don't expose myself this much, I won't be able to attract a man's gaze," she said with a provocative look in her eyes. Those words convinced me that she was a man and had a playful personality. After a while, we decided it was time to leave. Of course, I was going to go home. However, Emily said that she didn't want to go home yet, so she asked me to indulge her. "How about karaoke?" she suggested, asking me to sing a station to relieve stress and then go home. The soft feeling of her clinging to my arm. In a moment, my heart jumped. In the end, I couldn't resist the temptation and was taken to a nearby karaoke bar by Emily, who forcibly pulled me along. Emily entered the karaoke room and seemed to have already decided in her heart that she was going to get married today. She sat right next to me and proudly showed me her skinship as if she was not leaving any gaps. I felt my body temperature rising more and more as I was pressed by such a bouncy young woman. I joked that if I stuck to him too much, I would misunderstand. Then Emily boldly replied, saying that it was okay to misunderstand that it had alcohol in it, as if it had opened up again. And she brought her face close to my ear. "You know," she whispered, her voice a hot breath. "Today is a safe day for me." In that moment, my ears burned as if I had heard unbelievable words. I was incredibly flustered. If it weren't for my relationship with Helen, I would have gratefully accepted her offer and taken Emily to a hotel right away. It seemed that an angel and a devil were fighting fiercely in my heart. Emily stared at my face with an expression that seemed to be seducing me. In the end, I couldn't overcome the temptation of that youthful body. I took Emily's hand and went straight to the nearest love hotel, and I crossed the line I shouldn't have crossed. Emily was a truly captivating and talented woman. Her physical strength was so great that she enjoyed the time until she wanted to jump around on top of me. The moment I became one with Emily, I forgot everything. Pampered by Emily's words, "safe day," I had the best moment in her twice. When I asked her later, Emily had broken up with her boyfriend a while ago and was feeling lonely. He told me that I decided to invite him because I had a good physique and seemed to have no bad personality. I was just amazed at Emily's boldness in saying such things without hesitation. Anyway, I was able to spend a dreamlike time with a young woman a little younger than me. However, on the other hand, I remembered Helen and felt a guilt that tightened my heart. What the hell have I done? A sense of self justification, similar to an excuse that it couldn't be helped, along with a pathetic feeling, filled my heart. I was already angry. I couldn't do anything about it now. It was really good, and I went home with the spoiled Emily. After that, we met outside several times and had dates. Fortunately, break high top. Helen didn't seem to have any idea what had happened between me and Emily. When we met at home, Helen would pout at me and say that she wanted to spend some private time with me as soon as possible. I felt very complicated about the feeling of wanting to love Helen again and feeling guilty for betraying her. Nearly 2 months later, Emily announced that she had decided on a job and would be moving out of the house. By that time, Emily and I had been meeting outside once or twice a week and had become a loving relationship. There was a part of me that was completely used to the relationship with the young and fresh Emily. Emily rented an apartment near her company and moved out, but she would occasionally contact me, so let's play again. He said that it was fun to be with teacher Kita and that we were very compatible. With Emily out of the house, I was finally able to resume with Helen. Helen seemed very happy that her daughter had been hired and that she could spend time alone with me again. In this way, I was able to resume my sweet and sad love with Helen again. However, when I was avoiding love with Helen, the image of Emily sometimes scattered in my head. Yes, at times like that, I felt strange and indescribable. What should this feeling be called? But it is often said that humans are creatures that adapt to their environment. Both the teacher and Emily were really happy to be with me, so I was gradually able to lose my real weight. I spent my days telling myself that this could happen if I was alive. Currently, I spend intimate time with Helen on weekdays. And on weekends, I continue to live a life of avoiding love by meeting Emily, who dances in time. Helen, who is in her 50s, and Emily in her 20s, are each unique and have completely different charms. So for me, every date is fresh and exciting. And to be honest, it's very fulfilling. Some people may lean on their index finger at my branching behavior. Of course, I don't think there's any excuse for me. However, if many men were put in the same position as me, I think they would make a similar choice. I want to end my story by chanting such a self defense in my heart. Hashtag, hashtag, hashtag. Finally, the aftermath of the sense of life. A person's life is truly a matter of people. My life has always been stable and serious. Save money and become a meal part. That was my only goal when I went from the countryside. I buried myself in that goal until I cut off my relationship with the woman. Two lights suddenly appeared in front of me, the warmth of Helen and the brilliance of Emily. My love with Helen is like a summer night, and it gives me a deep but sure warmth. She fills my lonely heart with the taste of my hometown and the tolerance of an older woman. It is the joy of being required of a person. On the other hand, the love with Emily is bright and stimulating, like the sun of real leeches. The time I spend with her has helped me regain the youth I was about to lose and my confidence as a man. It is the instinctive joy of living as a man. Both of these loves have become essential nutrients for me. The charm of Zinnia's love is not just a physical connection, but it may be in gently healing the deep loneliness of no longer being seen as a woman, just as the appearance asks. Through them, I also have love as a person and the vitality of a man. At the same time, you are getting it. This guilty but unstoppable feeling. Is this a life transcending match? Or is it the living proof that I was desperately seeking in the unusual city of Tokyo? The answer has not yet been found. However, I am now biting into the perception of say on the love rope between two women. No matter what results are waiting for me in the future, I will never forget this feeling. Thank you for your maturity. Ken's story is a reminder that life doesn't always follow a straight line, and the human heart can find connection in the most unexpected and complicated of ways. Is this a story of selfishness and indecision, or a complex journey to find a sense of fulfillment he was missing? Can a person truly love two people at once? Where does the line between personal happiness and moral responsibility lie? We would love to hear your thoughts. If this story made you think, please leave a comment below. Let us know how it made you feel. And if you want to hear more unique stories about the human condition, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Thank you for listening.